Hey guys, let's talk about defining a category. Does that sound good? So sit back, relax, but we're gonna do this a little bit. We're gonna do this a little bit differently. We're not gonna just say what is the definition of the category. We're gonna go through the consumer decision tree to come up with our definition. I think it's best to go through and try to figure out how the consumer is buying it so that you can understand the scope of the definition. And so your definition, remember, we're trying to figure out on a category what can we analyze properly, and we need to make sure that we understand the scope. I don't know if you can see that or not, but anyway, just listen and take notes. So we're trying to understand the scope so that things don't just keep expanding to where we can't do this. It's to remember a category. What is a category? That's what I thought. A distinct and manageable set of products and services that the customers see as interrelated and solve a problem. That's how we can actually keep this thing under control. We need to understand exactly what a customer sees as part of it and what a customer does not see as part of it. You can go online and just look up the definition. What is this? And you can probably get a lot of suggestions that way through secondary data. But sometimes it's nice to kind of work through it yourself. So talk to me about a category. Let's pick a category. I'll give you a minute. You're thinking beer. All right, so let's do this. Remember, beer is going to be part of alcoholic beverages, but it's kind of like dairy. There's so many different components that you want to handle them separately. You wouldn't want to have a wine and beer category plan. That's just it's way too much. So let's talk about beer, because in the end we need to define beer. But why don't we figure out what people think of as beer from the consumer process first, and then work our way back. So talk to me, or talk to the screen. Talk to the screen about how do you buy beer. And remember, I want to introduce a thought process here about being substitutable. And the reason I want to do that is, if you are going to start figuring out how the consumer buys beer, you need to ask yourself, if I'm out of this, will they buy this? And if the consideration is that they wouldn't buy this item, and because you're out of this item, then more than likely you're on the right track. If you were out of this and they would easily switch over, if it was substitutable, or if it were substitutable or switchable, then they probably ought to be in the same decision process, because it doesn't make any sense to say, okay, we're going to go one way or the other if the customer sees them as interchangeable. So when you look at beer has massively changed over the last 5 years, and it's a growing category, if not a stable category now. We've gone from 800 brewers in the U.S. to 5,000 brewers in the U.S. And so in essence, we've gone from major Miller Coors and Anheuser-Busch to now everybody has their own brewery in their backyard. And so everybody wants to buy local, and I'm going to introduce another term here called brand promiscuity, which is kind of the way people are buying beer these days. As soon as they like you, they want to go on to something else. So there's a high level of brand promiscuity going on. So the customer has changed. The customer likes you until they like you, and as soon as they like you, they don't like you anymore. So that kind of makes sense. So probably the best way that we've seen is to go what you would consider domestic for lack of a better term, domestic being kind of the old boring beers like Bud, Miller, Coors, and actually for most of these guys, it's their light version, light or light, depending on whoever you are, L-I-T-E, and then on the other side, let's call it craft. It's probably the easiest way to split it, and you can kind of see why, because the customer is buying this one differently. In fact, it's almost like a totally different group than they're buying this one. And just as a little hint, you go this way if you have a whole bunch of friends coming over and you don't want to spend $11.99 a six-pack and watch them just guzzle it down and then jump on tables and film it on Instagram. That's really for this beer, and that's probably for, and go a little bit further, the opening price point beer, being the kind of garbage beers, Keystone, Busch. Probably some of you drank some of this last night, but they're really crappy beers. Rolling Rocks, get a box of rocks, that kind of stuff. And then over here, for the Bud, Miller, Coors, and we'll call it national brand equivalent to use the store brand term. And this would be all the lights and stuff. And then you're heading over into whether or not the brand is pervasive. And so you have to kind of ask, if you drink Busch, would you be more likely to want to drink Bud Light if you're trading up, so to speak? You're not going to be trading up for a while. And somewhere in here, what happened was Michelob Ultra redefined itself. So let's kind of put them on their own, because they redefined themselves as kind of a healthy beer. They're trying to bridge between the couple. And then you would have a high-end domestic, but that's kind of faded out these days. And Miller treated Ice House as a fighter brand throughout the country, but in most of the areas that was Ice House. This is all the ice beers, anything that looks like platinum or something like that. So this is kind of the way the customer sees this. And there's still a lot of volume here, so you can't ignore the volume. There's just not a lot of trend. It's flat. Pardon the pun. It's not flat beer, but it's flat growth. But it's high volume. So you have to take care of it, and it's best to make sure it's kept cold, and even in the summer, keep the beer in the back cold so that when it comes out, it doesn't have to take hours to cool down. I mean, there are a lot of things you need to do as a category manager to take care of your customer. Customers like cold beer. Don't keep it in the back in 100 degrees to bring it out and let the cooler cool it down. The cooler's not going to cool it down. So there's some things you got to make sure you put in place. Keep it in the dairy cooler, bring it out cold, and then your customers are going to be happy. And then let's go over here to the craft side. And I'm not ignoring import. Import is kind of like, well, it's out there. We don't really, import used to be just Corona. In fact, you could just say Corona Heineken, and Heineken's little baby brother Amstel, or Amstel Light, and it kind of stopped, and so this one, you could probably split some things up by countries. You can go into some Peroni in Italy, and you can head over into Mexico, and maybe get in a Red Stripe or something like that. But for the most part, it's a stable area. I mean, you kind of keep it stable, and I'm not ignoring. It's its own separate line. Not ignoring all this other stuff over here. You have the seltzers and the ciders. Because in essence, they kind of became known as let's pick up a cider while we're over here. Let's talk about craft, because I'm going to run out of time. I try to keep these videos about 10 minutes. Where you are buying domestic, primarily focused on brand, the studies have shown this one you're doing it as kind of let's call it a trip around the world. Or you might like Peroni and things like that. But in craft, you're buying it by style. So this is going, as you're working your way towards a definition, it's best to work your way this way so you understand what people are including. I wouldn't even include the root beers and garbage like that anymore. They were a fad and they're gone. Just be glad you didn't invest in not your father's root beer. It was kind of a dumb idea. But people bought it for a while and then it moved on. But in craft, if you are going to go by style, then you have to make sure you understand, add brand promiscuity to it, and you have to understand brand isn't as important anymore. Style is, and we can just name the styles. Obviously, you have lager and you have IPA, and in between IPA you have New England IPA, which is the hazy stuff, and then you have West Coast IPA, and then somewhere in there you have double IPAs, and you're moving your way everywhere. And now the trend is sour, and so the trend is coming from the west and moving its way to the east of the United States. And you know, what are we going to do with sours and lager and pilsner and wheat and all that other stuff is all kind of flowing in here. You're starting to understand where the definition of beer would be. It would be an alcoholic beverage that is satisfying a need for entertainment and includes. Remember, your definition has to say something like it includes blank, 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 and does not include wine, seltzers, Four Loko. You know, if you drink Four Loko, I don't know, just why would you drink Four Loko? So this is how we start, and then you start writing this out. And you say, okay, this category includes this, and you're working your way across. So all I want to do today, and I'm going to cut off the video, is take us through a decision tree that then we would bring back up. It's taking the customer in mind to now make it into our definition, because you cannot start assessing a category until you understand what's inside the definition, because you have to consider scope. And then in the next video, we're going to have to consider the role of the category. You can't assess a category unless you know what role it's going to play in the retailer, because then that would have obviously a different set of KPIs or key performance indicators. So if it's stowing where you are, maybe this is how you can spend the rest of your day. If you're watching this in the summer, I guess same. I will talk to you later.